Even more delays and even more millions. Who will be surprised? This is a scandal manufactured by SNP ministers, and they all have their fingerprints on it. Humza Yousaf, John Swinney, Kate Forbes, Nicola Sturgeon, to name a few. After all that's gone wrong, it beggars belief that senior management handed themselves bonuses without anyone in the Scottish Government noticing. The previous turnaround director received £2 million. He was let off scot-free. This gravy train needs to end. This is not the government's money, this is taxpayers' money. So what is the Deputy First Minister going to do to get this money back? This is a scandal with continuing consequences for island communities. Even SNP MSPs don't seem to trust the SNP anymore. So will the Deputy First Minister now order an independent inquiry into this whole shameful debacle? And finally, if the concerns of the GMB union had been listened to earlier, then perhaps we wouldn't be in this mess. Instead of hiding behind the workforce, what are the government going to do now to listen to the workforce on the need for investment in facilities at the yard to ensure there is a future beyond the MOD work, beyond these two vessels and the mess the SNP have created?
Cabinet Secretary.
I think in all of this, the intention of ministers has been to support the development, the retention and development of shipbuilding on the Clyde. If I go back to when Ferguson's went into administration in 2014, I led the government's efforts to try to secure a rescue of Ferguson's. And the purpose of that was to try to preserve the very employment that Mr Bibby talks about, and to preserve the employment of some of the finest people I've met in my life, the workforce of Ferguson's. And I know a number of them personally, going way back in my parliamentary career. Good, decent people who know their skill. So I'm going to make no apology for trying to protect employment on the Clyde in relation to shipbuilding, because I know how important it is for everybody, for who we are as a country. But there are, of course, difficulties and challenges in the execution of this contract, and I make no bones about that. I've set out, I think Mr Bibby's from a sedentary position asking me to apologise for that. I've apologised for it before, and I apologise for it again. It's a matter of deep regret to me. On the question of the bonuses, I think the bonuses are reprehensible. The government didn't know about them. The government found out about them as a consequence of the audit work. We were never consulted about them, and we should have been consulted about them. So I find them reprehensible, and we are assessing what actions we can take in that respect. Now, on the question of an independent inquiry, obviously there's been a lot of scrutiny about the Ferguson's issues. Parliamentary committees have looked at that. Indeed, Mr Leonard chairs the Public Audit Committee, which is looking at many of these questions. So I think it's premature for me to say anything. And indeed, as Mr Bibby knows, I'm not going to be here for much longer in this place, so in this front bench anyway, so I won't commit to any further inquiries. And the final point in relation to the voice of the workforce, I've listened carefully over many years to the voice of the workforce, and the government's doing exactly what the workforce wanted, and that's invest in that yard. We've been doing that. We get criticised for it. And yes, the investment has been put in. I don't think there's much support for investment in the yard from over this side, from what I can hear being shouted at me in the background. But I assure Mr Bibby of the government's commitment to invest in the yard for the future.